This podcast is brought to you by Bonus Room Productions, and we own this town.
I am Jason T. Mears, Esquire.
And I'm Kelly Hoyle Bullock.
And we are Dimas Today. How's it going, Kelly?
It's going pretty good, JT. It's a Saturday. It's beautiful outside. You're looking beautiful.
Hey, I'm not the guy with the brand new haircut.
You know, thank you. I had someone today tell me I didn't look a day over 32, and that's been the highlight of my week.
Well, I hate to break it to you, brother, but they were lying to you, man.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. You look great. You look great. You look great. You're looking really good today, Kelly.
All right. It's been a pleasure doing San Dimas today with all of you.
All right, let's talk about some Bill and Ted, man.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so we are going to talk about two specific instances from the films where the boys use time travel to fix a specific predicament that they find themselves in. In the first movie, they are breaking the personages of historical importance out of jail.
Right. Captain Logan, Ted's dad, they were all arrested at the mall in record response time.
Yeah, like literally that is the world's most secure mall. At least 80 security guards at that mall.
All those guys should be working for FEMA now.
They should be. They should be. Absolutely.
The beginning of the movie, Ted's dad's keys go missing, right?
Right, and they use it as an instance to show what a hard-ass Captain Logan is. Ted, you got to be more responsible, you know, where are my keys? Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't know, Dad. And then you find out later
that Ted really did take them.
Yes, he just hadn't taken them yet.
Yes.
That's time travel. And then in the second movie, they used the same reasoning and same tool set to defeat Dimas at the Battle of the Bands.
Right.
And each time they're like, okay, after we get out of this, we got to remember and go back and steal the keys. We got to set up the garbage can. We got to use a tape recorder. You know, we got to set up a giant jail cell to fall down on Dimas.
So that concept from the first movie, they just inject it full of steroids for the second movie.
Yeah,
it goes so far overboard, almost like a Joe Dante move in Gremlins 2, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. They took a great original concept and then just blew it out of the water with absurdity and elegance. And it's a joy to behold. I mean, what a great way. And then, like, of course, it's a great climax of that movie. But then you've got the great rollout with the credits, with the newspaper segments, well, God gave rock and roll to you. And anyway, we bring up the guys using time travel to fix a certain predicament because that's what Kelly and I are going to do right here. We recorded our first episode, and then we went and recorded our second episode. Then we realized we didn't like our first episode. So we went back and re-recorded that first episode. Then, before we were able to finish the second episode, we were able to conduct an interview. And that interview was so amazing that we decided that we needed to move that interview to be in our second episode. So we moved what was going to be the second episode to the third episode, then moved the interview to the second episode, then recorded an intro and an outro to that episode, then realized we did not like the intro and outro to that episode, and then we re-recorded those at least 30 times until you are, here you are. And we have fixed everything, and it's all perfect, and this is literally the greatest podcast that has ever been done. This is completely error-free, no mistakes whatsoever. No editing has been done to this, will be done to this. This is going to go straight to the Library of Congress. I'm pretty sure they're going to memorialize this one forever. And did I mention we got to interview Chris Matheson?
Unbelievable. I'm still in shock that we even did this.
We got to sit down for a full half hour over Skype and just pick his brain about Bill and Ted. This guy co-created Bill and Ted with Ed Solomon. He's the big get. I mean,
right.
Amazing.
I mean, created the characters, co-screenwriter, author now. We got so many great nuggets that we never even knew about the movie. So we're really excited to play this interview for you. So everybody sit back. We'll talk to you on the other side of the interview. Here is our interview with Chris Matheson.
Excellent!
Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Sure.
So first question we have, how did you get started in screenwriting?
Well, I was a theater major in college, and I was going to do theater, and that's actually how Ed and I met, is we took a playwriting class. We both took our first playwriting class together, and we sort of got to be friends that way. And I think we were both kind of doing theater for a while. In fact, we got to be friends because I directed one of his plays, and so we hung out a lot. And I even went to graduate school to study theater directing. And then at a certain point, I just thought, I think both of us sort of felt like, well, movies are better for comedy, which generally speaking, I think they are, because you can kind of catch lightning in a bottle, so to speak, in a way that you can't in theater, where you have to do it night after night after night after night. Harder to keep it fresh, I think.
Right.
Or at least that's what I thought at the time. And I, also theater is just a certain kind of life where you just, it's an itinerant life where you're just always moving around. And I wanted, to settle, just not be moving all the time. So just started writing screenplays when I was about 23, maybe 24, and wrote, 4 maybe before Bill and Ted. Not with Ed. I wrote 4 by myself. I think he wrote a couple by himself. And then we had this idea, and it seemed like a good idea, and we wrote it. And then it kind of, with a few bumps, it got us in the game.
Oh, that's great. So what was the genesis of the characters of Bill and Ted?
Ed and I used to do improv with 3 friends on Sunday night. We just, not for an audience, just to kind of play with ideas and throw, we were young comedy writers, and we wanted to just play with stuff. So we'd improvise, we'd just throw ideas around, and we'd try stuff. And one night, I suggested as an idea for a scene, 2 teenage boys who don't know anything about history, studying for history. And Ed and I played the 2 characters, and we just started, it was kind of interesting, because almost from the start, we just kind of talked to each other in that Bill and Ted, it was like, how's it going, dude? How's it going, dude? Good, and they didn't know anything. Obviously, they knew absolutely nothing. Everything was either excellent or bogus, and but they were really fun to play. And we did it. I don't know how long the skit was. It wasn't very long. It was probably 10 minutes. But they were really fun, and they were so much fun that we went out afterwards to a coffee shop, and we just kept doing them. We kind of stayed in character, and for, I don't know, a couple hours maybe. And by the end of those couple hours, we had an idea. We had a reasonably good idea of who Bill and Ted were. I mean, by the end of those 2 hours, I don't know exactly what we had, but we might very well have had Ted's dad and Missy and Bill's dad and doing bad in high school. And I don't think we had Rufus. We didn't have Rufus yet. And we had stuff that fell off along the way, like their mothers, for instance.
Right. That's something we're going to talk about in the future on the show. But yeah, that's
yeah. Why do Bill and Ted not have mothers?
Yeah, exactly. That's on our hit list.
Ed and I have talked about that many times. Why do these guys not have? What does that say about us?
Do you have any insight into that before we talk about it later?
Like an 80s LA thing. Just nobody had any.
No. It's deep. It's deep. Chris and Ed's psychodrama is what it amounts to. It's mother stuff. That's what it is. Actually, we didn't know how to. Ted did have a mother that we wrote, but Ted's mother was off screen, and she was just always yelling at him. She was always saying, "Ted, where you go?" She was kind of shrewish, actually. And we have Bill say to him, "Ted, your mom's so fat she can't even come out." And Ted saying, "Dude, it's a glandular problem." And Bill saying, "Yeah, she's got fat glands." I don't, but. Yeah. Anyway, so by the end of that, we really kind of fell for them fast, and we started playing around with them, just being them, because we liked being them, because it's always really been fun to be Bill and Ted. It's just very relaxing place to be, and we would. I went back to grad school, and we would write letters back and forth as Bill and Ted. We'd get on the phone and talk as Bill and Ted, and just kind of with no real notion of putting them in a movie yet. We just thought they were fun characters. They were just fun. And then eventually, as young aspiring screenwriters, we thought, well, maybe we could put these guys in a movie. And we started looking for the idea, and we ended up landing on time travel.
That's fantastic. So which one of you was Bill and which one of you was Ted? Or were they unnamed at that point?
Yeah, the thing about Bill and Ted and me and Ed is we've both always been both. It's always gone back and forth. It's never been the case that, like, he was Bill and I was Ted, or vice versa. It's always kind of been, when we get going, we just do the dialogue back and forth, kind of tennis, and then go back to the start and just go Bill, Ted, Bill, Ted, Bill, Ted. Now, so many years later, they're very different for us, but back then they were kind of like one guy. So we would just, write dialogue and then break it up.
That's almost the central thesis of our first episode. We talked about Bill and Ted, and if there were differences between the two, and we ultimately landed on the fact that no, they are almost the same person. Like, if you look at Station,
they're kind of one. It's two guys, one brain, sort of.
Yeah, and it's just genius. And if you look at the scripts, there's almost no scene where they're not both in the scene together, or even shots. If you see a shot, Bill and Ted are in the shot together. It's just great.
Yeah, pretty much. That was our idea for them. That we wanted them to enter every scene talking, like they just have basically a non-stop dialogue. They enter every scene talking, they exit every scene talking, and they're talking all the time. They're just constantly sort of talking to each other.
And when you're talking about just enjoying being those characters, it's evident to me over the years in rewatching the movie, what makes it so rewatchable is that I think as a viewer, we love to go back into that world. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that. I kind of believe that. I think that what makes it, what gives it its lasting meaning, let's say, is that Ed and I loved those guys instantly. I mean, we loved them. We really did. We just loved being, and they were like some weird alter egos for us, probably. But we really loved them. And then it was very obvious that Alex and Keanu loved playing them, and they enjoyed it, and they basically established a lifelong friendship on the basis. I mean, Alex and Keanu had never met before they played Bill and Ted, and they're still very close friends 30 plus years later. Right. So there was something about, I'm not saying Bill and Ted is the reason why they're still close friends, but I think maybe bonding that way right off the bat as these guys, I don't know, maybe that, I don't know. I have no idea actually whether that plays into their long-term friendship, but I like to think so. And I think that people, they like that. The Bill and Ted mindset is nice. It feels good. It's a very positive way of looking at life, actually.
Mm-hmm. Two characters that lifelong buddies, you would just assume, and it happens for the guys that play them. It happens for two guys doing a podcast at 40 years old about their favorite movie. You know?
So you guys wrote the script. You shopped it around. Obviously, it got picked up. Was there anything in that original script that you wished had made it to the screen that didn't?
Good question. I don't know. I haven't read the original script in a while. It is remarkably close to what we wrote, in fact. Steve Herrick, the director, was really very faithful to what we wrote. And this was a kind of a different era in comedy making. Comedy making now tends to be like just improvise, like use the script as a launching pad and get a bunch of good improvisers and improvise. It wasn't really like that. It was really, there's a little bit. I mean, the guys do, Alex definitely improvises a little bit here and there, and he's good at it. But there wasn't a ton of that. It was pretty, it was pretty close to what we wrote. I'd have to think about that. Like when we first wrote it, Rufus had a dog that traveled with him named Dog Rufus. And, Bill and Ted, really loved Dog. How's it going, Dog Rufus? And, we liked Dog Rufus. So I was sorry to see Dog Rufus go. I would say in the second movie, there were definitely some things that I wish would have reached the screen, but we didn't get right. So they didn't, they didn't end up in the movie, which was kind of a drag. Mm-hmm. But the first movie's pretty close, actually.
Before the second movie came out, I remember buying the comic book adaptation and reading the original ending where, Bill and Ted die several times and they cash in on their wins against the Grim Reaper, and the fears come back to attack them as they're in the van. Were you guys involved in the rewrite of the ending there? Was that done by...
Yeah, sure, we were, because basically, and I don't know exactly why, but it just didn't work. Sometimes you film stuff that just doesn't work. It just didn't work. It didn't come off. And so we had to adjust. And so we had to write new stuff, which we did, yeah.
So going back to Alex and Keanu becoming a part of the project initially, was that just, through sort of a normal casting kind of method that you guys did, or?
Yeah, basically.
Right.
I mean, the movie, it sort of bumped around for it got picked up in early 1985. And then we did some sort of development of it, including a draft, which was terrible, in fact, where I'm not sure whether we actually wrote it or whether we just outlined it, but there was a version per a director who was the wrong director for the project, but he wanted to have them travel around in like giant robots, like Transformers, like they were driving Transformers around, not a phone booth, not a van, which it was originally. It was just a van, a 1969 Chevy van.
To be clear, we're talking about Robert Redford here, right? He was the original director?
Yes, we're talking about Robert. Yeah. Okay. Exactly. No, it's actually, to give it away, it's Stanley Kubrick.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But no, of course it wasn't Stanley Kubrick. No, I'm not going to say who.
No, of course not. We're not looking for dirt here.
If it was Stanley Kubrick, I would have said, yes, sir, Mr. Kubrick. Right. Is there anything else you'd like? That it had a climactic scene where Ted actually was sent to Oates Military Academy, and Bill has to, I think, drive a giant robot up to Alaska and rescue. I mean, it was way, way wrong. I mean, it was really wrong. And they even changed the title from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which they thought was a bad title, or somebody thought was a bad title, to just Dudes. It was just Dudes. It was called Dudes for a while.
That sounds like a 1970s Western starring Kirk Douglas.
I think there is a movie called Dudes, in fact. I'm not sure, but I believe there is. But so that went on, and then the studio that had bought it, they, it just sort of kicked around, and then the studio that wanted to make it, they bought it, and then we just began the process of getting the movie made and casting it. And Alex and Keanu were two of the actors who came in to audition, and I think it was pretty obvious to everybody from the start. I remember looking at tapes. I mean, we weren't in the room. Ed and I were not in the room. But I remember they showed us tapes, and I remember watching the tapes, and I think it was obvious to everybody that they were the two guys.
Well, I'd say it worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did, because you don't have the right two guys playing Bill and Ted. Well, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It's just not. It's just because this is the mid 1980s, and of course the Dreamcast at that moment, and people talked about it, was Michael J. Fox and Anthony Michael Hall. That's what they wanted to do. That's what they were hoping for. Wow. And those guys are both talented. Sure, I'm not dissing on either one of those guys. That would have never worked.
Yeah, they're not Bill and Ted.
Not at all.
Did you guys have a type or a person that you envisioned for Rufus?
Ed might have something different in his mind for. Well, yes, when we were writing it, we had David Lee Roth in mind. That's who we were. That's who we were thinking of when we wrote it. Then we got into actual casting, And my fantasy at the time was Ringo Starr. I really wanted Ringo Starr to play the part. But, you know, it ended up being Carlin, and Carlin's great. I mean, Carlin's fantastic.
Yeah, nobody's going to argue with George Carlin.
No,
were you guys,
not at all.
Were you guys pleased? Were you hoping for all the musician cameos that you guys got in both the films? Was that something that you were trying to bake into the DNA, or was that just...
I don't think that ever crossed our mind. I think that would have been more the producers and more kind of like, you know, it's a little bonus for the audience in a way. I don't remember it other than Rufus. Mm-hmm. It never, maybe Ed and I thought, oh, famous musicians should play the great people. But I don't know. Okay. I don't remember ever having that conversation. We might have, but I don't remember.
Well, it certainly provides all these years later for great little like Easter eggs in both movies. So even rewatching Bogus Journey recently, and I just realized for the first time that Taj Mahal is the gatekeeper there. So that was really neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, huh?
So, at what point did you guys think, all right, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure doing pretty well, we should start working on a sequel?
Well, you know, we loved Bill and Ted, and we loved writing the first movie. So I would say in 1984, I remember we'd written it. We wrote it in the fall of 1984, and we liked it, and we felt proud of it, and thought it was pretty good. It ended up taking a little while for it to find its place, but we thought it was really fun, and I think we thought it was funny. And so even then, before anything happened, I remember Ed and I waiting up all night for tickets to a Springsteen concert in fall of '84. Back in the day where you'd line up outside a record store. You'd line up for Ticketmaster or whatever so that you could get good seats. I don't believe that happens anymore because now everybody does it online. Mm-hmm. But so we basically were just in this line all night. And we were starting to talk about a sequel. We were starting to talk about what we would do if we brought him back for another story. So he and I were thinking about it almost instantly. But in a business sense, I would say the first movie came out and it had a good opening weekend, and then it sort of hung in there. And I would say within a couple of weeks, we were starting to hear noise that they wanted a sequel. So we got into it.
So then at what point did you guys start talking about, and we're not going to get into specifics here because we understand, the future is unwritten, but at what point did you start considering Bill and Ted 3 and what might happen there?
I remember at the premiere of Bogus Journey, and this is in 1991, and I remember saying to Alex and Keanu, what do you guys think? Could we ever do a number 3? And it was like shrugs, like, I don't know, maybe, if there was a good idea, who knows, maybe. And then it just sort of went silent for a long time, and there was really no talk about it at all until, well, quite a long time passed. I would say about 15 years passed, but somewhere around 2007, 8, Ed and I started talking about it, and we said, well, what if we took a shot at that? Which was kind of a foolish thing to do because we didn't own the material. MGM owns the material. It's theirs. It's like remodeling a rental house. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't own it, yep. But we wanted to do it because we loved the characters, and we thought, well, we'll just do it and hope for the best. So we met with Alex and Keanu a number of times, and until we came up with an idea that we all liked, and then we got into it and wrote it, and now are yes, very, very close to getting it made, but still kind of waiting on a few things. It's hard to get a movie made. Yeah. It really is. It takes a kind of a stars being aligned sort of thing.
So, one of the things I've always wanted to ask with these movies, I thought they were pretty unique kind of buddy comedies for their time and place. And I'm wondering what maybe your thoughts are on the influence that had for movies that came out after that. And, specifically I can think of I think it's a quote from Dana Carvey in that Live from New York book where when he was initially presented with the idea of Wayne's World, he always kind of felt like they were just ripping off Bill and Ted. I don't know if you ever knew that, but
yeah, no, I did see that quote. Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, the first time I saw Wayne's World, I was like, wow, okay, damn, that's kind of similar, isn't it? It ends up being a very different animal than Bill and Ted. It's got a whole different vibe to it, and it's funny in its own way. Yeah, I mean, I would think that there's some influence there. Other than that, I mean, there were definitely, I mean, like I never even saw Dude, Where's My Car? I would assume something like Dude, Where's My Car was influenced by Bill and Ted. I don't know. Beyond that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Do you think?
I mean, in truth, you kind of gotta love the characters. It's not something you can fake. You couldn't like cynically do a Bill and Ted knockoff, because what makes Bill and Ted is not the plot, it's not the story, it's not the structure. It's the guys, mm-hmm. and it's that we actually really, really loved them, you know?
Yeah. Do you think that the original movie would get made today?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, it's a pretty catchy little idea. I mean, it's pretty... I would think so. It wasn't really expensive, and yeah, it wouldn't shock me if it did. It's not the kind of movie that I'd look at and go, "Oh my God, that would never, ever in a million years get made today."
So it's not your Heaven's Gate, is what you're saying?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That gives me hope for the future. That's fantastic. You have transitioned. You are now, it appears, working more on novels come out. You had one just come out a few months ago, right?
I did. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm from films other than Bill and Ted 3. I would say I'm retired from movies.
Oh, movies.
Okay. Movies it's hard work, you know. It's a rewarding job, but it's a tough job in a lot of ways. And yeah, I mainly write books now.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like that was a pretty easy transition for you then to move to something that you've got a little bit more control over.
Yeah, it's writing books is very nice. Writing movies is you're creating a map essentially for other people to make a journey, and it takes hundreds of people to make that journey, and at least a dozen of them are very, very super important and can completely ruin the journey just single-handedly. The wrong actor, certainly the wrong director, the wrong producer, the wrong cinematographer, the wrong actor.
Somebody wanting to add giant robots to your script.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Whereas a book, you just write it. It is what it is, and that's, from a writer's standpoint, that's kind of satisfying.
It looks like if you glance back at your output for the past 5 or 6 years, it seems you've been focusing a lot on theological humor. Is there something that, and I don't mean to pigeonhole you at all, but
you could say that.
So what draws you to that and finding the humor?
Oh, anti-authoritarianism, let's say.
Great.
I don't like absolute truth. I don't like the idea of absolute truth. I don't like people saying, I know what life is. I know reality. Let me tell you what it is. And if you don't agree with me, you're going to burn forever. I don't like that. That rubs me the wrong way. So I just thought, yeah, okay, this is a worthy subject to make fun of, and that's what I've been doing.
Well, that's fantastic. I've got to say, in the story of God, every time you actually quote the Bible after one of the absurd sentences that's written, it's like a little gut punch of humor. It's just so great. It's just so great.
Well, that's good to hear. It's the Bible is a tremendous source of found comedy.
Yes.
I would love to see your iteration of God from that book, like on film. That would be pretty neat.
Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? I know. Yeah, you and me both.
Who would you cast as God?
Oh, I mean, you get the best actor. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, if he'd come out of it. I mean,
Right.
You get the best. I mean, there's a version of things where you just play him as just a big blustery buffoon, and Will Ferrell kills it, because he's really funny. But the most interesting version is the tormented, self-hating version, and that's Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, I think we're about out of time. I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking with us. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I hope it all goes well.
Oh, man, that was amazing. Chris Matheson, right?
I just don't know what to say after that. He was just a pleasure to speak to. I really love the sound of his voice.
Oh, yeah, it's like soothing. I want to like listen to his voice as I go to sleep at night.
Right. And I've been listening to the audiobook of his first book.
Yeah.
And
does he read it?
Yeah, he reads it.
Oh,
Does them both, yeah.
So I was the guy who went ahead and bought both books, but now I got to get the audiobooks too to listen to as well. And so if you haven't read them or listened to them, absolutely be sure to go to Amazon and pick up copies of The Story of God and The Trouble with God. Great books. Hilarious. Cannot recommend them highly enough.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for us for this episode, right?
I think it does. Want to thank Scott Bricklin and Scooby Tunes for the use of the most excellent song, Walk Away, as our theme music.
Right. Can't get the riff out of my head.
No, never will. Never will. Want to thank We Own This Town and Michael Eads, our producer. And Kelly, be excellent to each other.
Party on, dudes.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at San Dimas Today.
We're definitely in shock jock territory now.
Bogus.
How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes?